Bonjour, bienvenue. No, I'm just trying to confuse you there. No, you're in the right place. The Bible in the year 2021, and we're on day 69. I just wanted to throw in there that we are recording this in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, where the majority of the language is French. So, day 69, numbers 35 to 36, and we're finishing it up. We're finishing up with Numbers. Can you believe that? The fourth book of the Pentateuch. Congratulations on that. We are finishing the fourth book of the Pentateuch. The Pentateuch are the five books that Moses is credited with writing. Um, and Deuteronomy will be the last of those, which we'll start in on tomorrow. And on top of those four books, you also completed Job. So yeah, good for you. Congratulations. So let's get in on this before we congratulate ourselves and not finish. Okay, that's here we are. Numbers, uh, chapter 35, verse 2. Here we see something really important that's established. It's the establishment of the Levitical cities. This is the place where the Levites are going to live because you remember they don't get to inherit any land at all. They've kind of been removed from the grouping of the 12 tribes. They're still, they are still part of the 12 tribes, but when it comes to inheritance, their inheritance is Yahweh. That's their inheritance. And so everybody needs a place to live. So Yahweh has arranged that there will be a number of cities that will be set aside for them. And so we read here, command the Israelites that they give cities from their inherited property to the Levites in which to live. You will also give the Levites pastures around their cities. Um, 500 feet, I think. You read it. It's there in the scriptures, but I believe it's a circumference of 500 feet, um, radiating around the city there. Um, yeah, everyone needs a place to call home, and it's great that the Levites have this incredible responsibility, but they also need to have a place that they can call home, and everybody needs that, and it's something that we need to keep in mind. Anybody we come across, man, they need a place. They need a place where they feel safe, and I pray that they find that in our belief communities, in our faith communities, that they find a place that even if they are not walking with the Lord, they still find that it is a place where they are welcomed and loved, accepted, and cherished. So they have an opportunity to taste of the Lord's love for real. Everybody needs a place where they belong to. Um, some of the more popular sitcoms on TV, you had that sense. The friends, just because they were a group of people who were just, no matter what they went through, they stuck together. They worked through things. Um, sure, like Cheers, where it felt like home for them, that they were like a family. And this is what church is supposed to be for us. It's not a place of criticism, a place of tearing down, a place of destruction. It's a place where we come alongside and we make this commitment to each other that we'll never give up on each other, because the Lord never gives up on us. And that's what we do for each other. We have this beautiful community. And sometimes people will come and people will go, but we never harden our hearts to protect us from the hurt that sometimes we will experience with the coming and going of people. This is just so important. And this is what the Levitical cities reminded me of, is just this: everybody needs a place to call home. So we in this, okay, so we have the Levitical cities, but within the Levitical cities we will now have established the refugee cities. The refugee cities will be part of the Levitical cities. So we see six for the entire nation. There's going to be six cities. Six of the cities that you give to the Levites will be refuge cities, not refugee cities, refuge cities, a place to seek refuge. You will allow the person who kills someone to flee there. Really important. You will allow the person who kills someone to flee there. Now, we know already how Yahweh feels about this. Um, part of the reason for the flood was because of the violence that people were showing to each other, and it had infected all of creation. This violence has a way of infecting and spreading and growing. It pollutes the land, and that's what Yahweh will say later on. This murder pollutes the land, and yet instead of just executing that person on the spot, Yahweh is creating this place of protection for them to go to, and we're going to see why in a second. So you will allow the person who kills someone to flee there. In addition to these, you will give them 42 cities. So in all, they're going to have 48 cities, and 6 of them are being set aside as designated places of or cities of refuge. Now look at this. Look how this is being divided up. As for the cities that you give from the property of the Israelites, you will take more from the larger tribes and less from the smaller tribe, from the smaller, each in proportion to its inheritance. Will give cities to the Levites. Now, you and me, we might think that that just makes sense. But when you're big and powerful, you get to dictate the rules. I don't know. Like, you're not taking those cities. No, let them go be taken from Benjamin. Benjamin's smaller. I'm not giving up my cities. But the Lord just establishes here this justice, and it brings fairness. His justice brings fairness. It only makes sense, and He's not allowing um, things to be ruled by might. No, things are ruled by His heart. It's not if you're stronger, you get to make up the rules. If you are a majority, you get to make up the rules. If you are a majority, you get to do what you want. That's not what's being said whatsoever. Justice brings fairness. Justice is Father's heart. We need to keep this in mind. This is why He emphasized to take care of the widows, the orphans, and the refugees. This is so important that we have this sense of justice, right? Justice, but the good sense of justice, the fairness sense of justice. Mercy triumphs over justice, right? So when it comes to giving out punishment, it gets tempered, and especially by grace, especially those of us who are sitting on this side of the cross. Jesus spends time in dealing with this in the grace that gets given out. Anyway, we're not going to go down that road because it's a big road. But just so you get this, I just want you to grab hold of how important justice is to Yahweh. This is something really, really important for us to understand when it comes to fairness. And then we again see this heart of justice in what He is setting up here in the refugee cities, in the refuge. I said it's not refugee cities, and I go ahead and say it in the refuge cities. Okay, the cities will be for you. This is verse 12 of 35. The cities will be for you a place of refuge from the close relative of the dead, because the close relative of the dead is the one, he was the executioner. So when judgment is passed on the person, there is one person from the family who is considered the executioner. And sometimes they jump the gun before all the facts are in. So this is Yahweh's way of making sure everything is dealt fairly, that it's not judged by that person, but it is judged by the community. Okay, so the cities will be for you a place of refuge from the close relative of the dead. So that person cannot come into the city and kill somebody, because then that would be considered murder, and that person would then have to stand trial. So the person who killed someone may not be put to death, until he stands before the community for judgment. So it's the community that will pass judgment on this person. So the refuge is the place where the person can wait until the time of the trial. This is so advanced. This is so important. Um, hmm, yeah. And it's also because the sanctity of life, absolute sanctity of life. It is so important. Yahweh is the giver of life, and it is only by His permission that life can be taken. And if you take it, um, if you decide to take it, then you become a murderer, and you will now face judgment. And that's it's done that way because things are so violent, things are so out of control that he's bringing in a law to protect all life. So important, so important. We get it backwards. We get it backwards. We don't understand that this is a way of protecting life. um, uh, we Man, we just see it a thing of, an eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, and we don't understand these measures were put in place until grace could be introduced, until we discover the mercy, the compassionate heart of our Father. Um, yeah, He doesn't necessarily want to give people what they deserve. He wants to give them what He wants them to have. Guys, grab a hold of that, please. Please. So we have the definitions of murder, and he goes down. So if someone strikes a person with an iron object and he dies, he's a murderer. The murderer must definitely be put to death. So he goes through and he explains what should be considered murder. And we have this in our own judicial system. We have first degree murder, second degree murder. Some people call it third degree or manslaughter. So you have your first degree murder where you pre-plan it, you go out and you execute a person. um, uh, the other one is that it was you murdered the person but was spur of the moment. There was no pre-planning that was involved with it whatsoever. And manslaughter is something where um, it was by accident. It's not something that you intended. um, you may have fallen and knocked the person off the ledge, and they died. And it might be because there was a fight, and it resulted in death. No, there was no thought of death. You didn't try to kill that person, but because of your actions, that person ended up dying. So this is where, um, it could be. This is so. This was put in place for those accidental deaths. Okay, that's what the refugee cities are for. So that's where we have this third degree of manslaughter. But it's not that they got off. What do I manslaughter? Okay, there you go. Don't you guys just love the fact that we can do this even in all our imperfections? Yeah. Okay, so there you go. Manslaughter. Um, it was a jail sentence, really. Just read it through. But if some suddenly and without hostility, someone hits another or throws any object at him without premeditation, or accidentally drops any stone on him that could cause death and he dies, even though they weren't enemies and no evil was intended, then the community must come to a verdict between the killer and the close relative in accordance with these case laws. The community will protect the killer from the hand of the close relative and return him to the refugee city where he fled. He will live there until the death of the high priest who was anointed with holy oil. Listen, a gilded cage is still a prison. Okay, it doesn't matter how you sum it up. A prison could be a hole in the ground, or it could be the most magnificent city, but a loss of freedom is a loss of freedom. That guy can't go anywhere. He can't go anywhere. He has to stay within the confines of the city. There's no protection outside of the city. But look at the responsibility of the community. The community has to protect that person from the killer. They have to escort that person back to that city of refuge that he came from, and there he that might be it for the rest of his life. If it's especially if it's a young high priest, he might outlive the high priest and be set free, or the high priest could outlive him and he ends his days in that city. But this is the protection that was put in place. And the relative who had the right to vengeance would be considered a murder if they interfered with these regulations that Yahweh was putting into place. Now, and also look at this. This is really important because this also took place in Jesus' trial. They had to get two or three witnesses to agree on the same story, and they couldn't. Everybody had a different story when it came to Jesus. But look at this. Anyone who kills another will be executed on the evidence of witnesses. On the evidence of witnesses. But one witness alone cannot testify against a person for a death sentence. Yeah, so a person cannot be put to death on the word of one person. This is advanced stuff here. This is Yahweh's heart. This is what he is establishing. All the bases are being covered. It's just amazing stuff. I mean, we take it for granted. But considering what the world was like at this time, this is amazing things. And look at this. You may not pollute the land in which you live. For the blood pollutes the land. Remember right back to Cain and Abel? Abel was calling out. He was calling out from the land. He was where his blood was spilt. He was calling out. It's poetic, but that's how it's referred to. So for the blood pollutes the land. There can be no recovery for the land from the blood that is shed in it, except by the blood of the one who shed it. So in other words, there has to be justice. The only way that the land is cleared is by justice. And at that time, it was equal for equal. At that time, what justice looked like is if I cut off your pinky finger on your right hand, then my pinky finger on my right hand had to be cut off. If I hit you and caused you to be blind in your left eye, then my left eye would be struck so that I'm blind. It was this thing where escalation wasn't allowed. It was tooth for tooth, eye for eye. That's what it looked like. So if I took a life, then my life had to be taken, and the idea was the two offenses would cancel each other out. But it was temporary measures. You understand that it was temporary because the violence had to stop. It's pollution. It's absolute pollution to Yahweh. It's his creation had no violence in it. Even in the beginning, animal was not hunting animal. That didn't happen until before the flood, and then that's when, because of man, because of humanity's fall, then we ended up with herbivores and carnivores. But look at what Jesus said. You heard it said, "Do not murder," but I say to you. What did he say? He said, "Don't hate." Hate. See, he took it beyond the symptom. He took it to the heart of it. Do you understand this? Because this is the real thing that the Father is after. He does not want animosity between people. He wants there to be love. He wants us to discover what love is, what love does, what love provokes us to do. That we're not to consider that we have any enemy. And if anybody considers us to be their enemy, we still are kind and loving towards them. Jesus said, you love those who love you. I mean, what value is there in that? Love those who hate you. Love those who persecute you. Can you see it, people? Do you understand this? This is Father's heart. Jesus brought us to the deeper place of Father's heart. He had to put the stopgap in to stop the violence, to show that life mattered. And Jesus brings us to the place that instead of seeing a murderer executed, we want to see them restored. Yeah, that takes a lot of understanding. That takes a lot of maturity right there to get to that place. And then verse 34 tells us why this is important. Why is all of this important? Why are the refuge cities important? Why is this protection of a murderer important? Why is it important that there be a trial instead of an execution? Why is this all important? Look at this. You will not make the land in which you live unclean, the land in the middle of which I reside. For I, the Lord, reside among the Israelites. See, it wasn't so matter. He didn't want the refuge cities to even have to be used. He didn't want anybody to die. But recognizing that sometimes accidents happen, he put this in place so the relative responsible for vengeance wouldn't become a murderer. He is protecting that person from polluting the land. He is protecting that person. And why is it important? Because it's important to Yahweh. See, that's we have to get to that place in our relationship with him of loving him, where because it's important to him, it's important to us. That we love those who he loves. And our heart breaks over what breaks his heart. And that we are compassionate in the way that he is compassionate towards those who he is compassionate towards. That we show mercy and grace in the same way that he shows mercy and grace. Because it's important to him and he's important to us. And he is the one who we follow and we take our example from. Jesus said, listen, I don't say anything unless I heard the Father say it. And the things I do, I only do because I saw Father do them. This is maturity. Not acting on what we think is right, but acting on what we get from the Father. Just a couple of things in the last chapter here, in chapter 36. There's some clarification that needs to be made, and I think it was important because it was an important thing that we brought up before about how when a man does not have any males, that his land can be passed on to onto his daughters. But there is some clarification here because the tribes were a little concerned about this. And they came and they said, yeah, but what happens when our daughters marry outside of the tribe? Because then the land will go to their husbands and will become part of their husband's tribe. And so this is what they said. This is the word that the Lord commands the Zelophehad's daughters. They may marry whomever seems best to them, but they may only marry into one of the clans of their ancestral tribe, so that the inheritance of the Israelites doesn't transfer from one tribe to another. The Israelites will each retain the tribal inheritance of his ancestral tribe. This is important because what is being divided up is a permanent thing. And the reason it's done this way is so that you won't find tribe turning against tribe because they can't take each other's land. They can't do it through war and they can't do it through marriage. It's not allowed. It can't be done. And so we find here in verse 9, an inheritance of land may not be transferred from one tribe to another, for the Israelite tribes will each retain its own inheritance. So if they had possessed the whole land, if everything had gone the way it was supposed to have gone, this is the rule that was supposed to be in place for them. So there you go. Like that's it for numbers. Congratulations. Yay. You guys did it. Very proud of you. Thanks for being with me on this, guys. Thank you, because this is so important. I love doing this with you. And yeah, just, shoot me a line. Just, make a comment. Send me a message on Messenger, anything. Just let me know that you're there and alive, and that you're sticking with me on this. And yeah, give me some feedback, what you think. Okay, so be blessed, be encouraged in this day, and know that God loves you. Father loves you. He absolutely loves you, and He's for you. He's not against you, and He's good. Oh wow, He's good. God bless everybody.